Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and there is some stuff we need to talk about. So I have been working on this particular video. It may not seem like it over the course of it, but I have been working on this particular video for about a week, basically ever since Creative Assembly put out their response to community concerns by the message by Robert Bartholomew, who I believe is the chief product manager or something along those lines over at Creative Assembly. And I'm not going to focus overtly on that message. All I'm going to say is that I think it was very poorly written. It was super tone deaf, and it felt like Robert wrote it, or Rob, I think technically. It really feels like he wrote it in about 5 minutes and didn't pass it by anybody. Didn't ask anybody to double check his homework, and just sort of was like, here, put this out to shut up the masses. And it was like one of the worst messages it was one of the worst PR responses I think I've ever seen. It was garbage, and that was very disgraceful. I really hope someone gives a thorough talking to Rob about how to handle community interactions, because clearly he does not understand how to do it, and doesn't seem to understand anything about the Total War Warhammer community, and likely doesn't care. At least that's the vibes it gives off. He should be ashamed of that message. It was very poorly written, and I will heavily criticize that, because that was just awful. That being said, moving on from that, because I don't really care about that, I do want to talk about what's going on currently, where Total War Warhammer is being quite heavily review bombed. It has gone down to, I believe, mostly negative reviews. Let's take a little look-see here. Yes, it is now overwhelmingly negative. Overwhelmingly negative recent reviews. And there is a lot of conversation and hubbub about what is happening right now. So it's kind of a weird position, right, to be in, I think, for a lot of us. I genuinely very deeply love the Total War Warhammer 3 series. It is my absolute favorite game there is. Like, Baldur's Gate 3 and all this other stuff has come on, and I have not been able to make time to play any of those other games because I'm just having too much fun with Total War Warhammer 3. Shadows of Change is getting a lot of criticisms, but like, I'm having a lot of fun with the early access of it. I'm having more fun with that than I am with any other game. But that's just because, like, I'm just that big of a fucking nerd for Warhammer, and I am a shameless enjoyer of it, which is not a problem. I don't consider that a problem. It's just the way I am. That being said, I also feel very strongly that there are some serious issues that need to be addressed, and I want to do what I can do to try and take all this energy that's being kind of gathered up by the community, and if I can, try and push it in a constructive direction. That being said, if you're watching this, you may not give the slightest of shits what I think, and that's totally fine. I wouldn't give a crap what I think. My opinion is no more valid than anybody else's. So please do not take this as like me trying to tell anybody what to do. I am merely going to give some recommendations based on my experiences, my conversations I've had with like various individuals that I've gotten to know over my time interacting with Creative Assembly, and stuff like that, and what I think can get us moving in a good direction. Because one of the things that I have been seeing, and I've been getting a lot of messages about, I've had many community members messaging me on Twitter and Discord and Steam, who are like asking for my opinion, and a lot of people being very deeply worried and very concerned, or being very upset that, like, oh, there's all this like negativity and all this toxicity, and like I'm so scared about the future of the game and stuff. And I want to get a couple things really clear and present to y'all. The first is that you do not need to panic. There is no reason to panic. I do not think under any circumstance are we anywhere close in any universe to a 3K scenario. There is no way at all that this is going to result in Warhammer 3 suddenly being canceled, the DLC plans being thrown in the trash, and Creative Assembly refusing to support the game any further, and the death of Warhammer as we know it. That's not going to happen. There is literally zero chance that's going to happen. And I could spend a lot of time discussing the reasons, but I will break it down very, very simply for those that care. Of that, currently, Total War Warhammer is the only main tentpole game that Creative Assembly has. It is their only major project that is closely tied to the core IP pillars of Creative Assembly that is making bank. It's still making bank. Even when it's not having as good of moments as we would like, even when it makes missteps, it still is making excellent money. And like at the end of the day, that's all that matters for those that could potentially threaten its life like that. But the other thing is that they don't have anything else right now that's even close. Like Pharaoh, I wish all the best to the team at Sophia. I hope they are able to pull off an amazing game with Pharaoh, and I hope a lot of people will play it and it'll be a lot of fun. And that however, if they manage to pull off a fun, successful experience, that they reap the rewards of providing a fun and successful experience. But other than that, like, they don't have anything else going on right now. Hyena is not coming out for months, and I have no idea if that's going to be successful or not. But that's neither here nor there. The game is don't freak out. It's fine. It's fine. It's really fine. I honestly think this is a good thing. I think it is painful, but it's a good thing. It's like when you get really badly hurt, like you fell down and you scraped your leg really bad, and you've gotten to the doctor's office, and now they got to clean out the wound to make sure it doesn't get infected or to treat any underlying infection. It's painful. It sucks. You don't want to do it, but it's important to the healing process, and it's better for your overall life experience. And I think that's what's happening now, is that there is an infection in the Total War Warhammer experience that there is a wound that must be treated. And this is our opportunity as a community to treat this wound. And I think we should do our damnedest to make sure that this is a constructive moment, a betterment moment for the Total War Warhammer series, and not its death knell, which I don't think is really a realistic possibility at this time. So what do I mean by that? And it basically boils down to three things. Number one is that there is clearly some serious communication issues going on at Creative Assembly. Creative Assembly is a very large company compared to a lot of game studios. It is massive. They're working on lots of projects at once, which often causes various issues. But more importantly, we have kind of reached ahead of the issue where it feels like a lot of the people who are making the decisions upstairs, such as determining the price for Shadows of Change, as well as determining how many resources are being dedicated to the Warhammer series relating to how much money it makes, have kind of gotten out of hand. Where like Robert Bartholomew's message to me just screams that the people who are making the decisions about what should be happening with this series are not in tune with the community and are just completely somewhere else. They are not as aware as they should be. And that's not okay, because then they start making decisions that are going to hurt the game and upset the community when that is not necessary. There was no reason for that message to be written the way it was. There is no reason that the Shadows of Change price increase needed to be nearly this dramatic in either its suddenness or the way that it was communicated to us. Like, if the prices genuinely need to go up, right? Like, let's assume the best case scenario, which I don't think is true, but let's assume that Shadows of Change's initial price is legit, like that's just the way things are, right? Which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute. Even if that's the case, there are about 1 billion ways they could have handled this better. If you're gonna do a sudden price increase like that, that's something, in my opinion, that should be communicated beforehand. There should be discussions about that with the community to try and help ease into it. It should be a gradual price increase as well, not such a sudden jump especially when you're working with a DLC format that people have been familiar with. That being said, I want to kind of cut to the quick of, so what do we do, right? What do we do as a community to try and salvage a bad situation? Because I am very keenly aware that because I hear about it constantly from people who are sending me panicked messages, that yeah, there are people in places on the internet who are getting a lot of schadenfreude out of what's happening right now. There are a lot of bad actors. Well, not a lot. There is a minor group of very loud individuals who are rioting in the streets with glee that the Warhammer community is very upset, and they're doing everything in their power to make everyone as upset as they can, and saying, oh, the game's dead, the game's dead, oh, it's awful, CA's the devil, they're the worst thing in the universe, everything there is garbage, all my favorite, that's why everybody's left, and it's all terrible, and there's no saving it, and never buy anything again from them, which is, it's such an unnecessary escalation, where instead of saying, hey, this isn't cool and we need to course correct, it's just like complete doom and gloom, which fuck that, like, please, like, get over yourselves. That being said, like, I'm not gonna wax too lyrical on that, because I literally just think those are just completely not helpful arguments that are just there to be miserable and drag as many people down into misery as possible, because misery loves company. But for those of us that I think want to take a much more realistic view on what's going on and want to try and add as positive of an angle as we can to it, what I will say is that there are two things that the upper management at Creative Assembly care about. They care about Steam reviews and they care about sales. That's it. They do not care how angry you are. They don't care how good or badly you treat their lower staff, unfortunately, because they don't support their lower staff very much, in my opinion. But they don't care. Like, they will happily throw their poor community people to the wolves, because they don't have to deal with any of that. They don't give a shit. The guys that are determining the prices and who are determining how many resources are going to what, they do not give a damn about how you feel. All they care about are the Steam reviews and sales, which means that is our voting power. That is our weapon. So what can you do? Well, you can do a couple of things. Number one is that you can leave a Steam review, a negative Steam review, if you are so inclined. I am not suggesting anybody does this. I am not telling you to do it. I am merely informing you that it is something you can do and that it does make an impact. However, what I will say is, if you are going to leave a negative Steam review, you need to make sure it is well written. You need to make sure that it is a sensible criticism of what is wrong with the game, and it is something that can be addressed. If you just go on there and you go, CA eats babies and is literally a Nazi and fuck them, like, that doesn't help anybody, and that's going to get removed by Steam at some point. Like, eventually Steam is going to go through and they're going to scrub out any of the reviews that don't actually have review notes to them. Like, it's just like negative, not if it's obvious review bombing, they're gonna get rid of it, because that completely invalidates the review system. Like, you're not helping anybody. Now, if you go on there and you say, I'm leaving this negative review because I've put X hours in the game and I've encountered these particular kinds of bugs, and these bugs have been quite detrimental to my experience, and yet they're still in the game, and the developers do not seem to have the resources to deal with this issue, and it is of extreme concern to me, and until this issue is resolved, I'm going to leave a negative review for my review. That's completely valid. If you go on, you say, I think that the prices for this new Shadows of Change DLC are too high for the quantity of material that is coming into the DLC. That's a valid negative review. Like, point out the issues you're having with the game, but, try to be cordial about it. And that is going to have an impact. The other thing is whether or not you want to buy Shadows of Change. There is nothing wrong with buying it. Like, if you want to buy Shadows of Change, You are an adult. It is your money. You worked for it. You get to decide how that is spent. Do not let anybody else criticize you or like bully you based on your decision. If you say, I'm not going to buy Shadows of Change, period, whatsoever, because I'm not comfortable with this situation, and until Creative Assembly has made a proper course correction, I refuse to buy ever again, that's completely valid. If you're someone that Shadows of Change looks really awesome to you and looks like a really good time, and you've been watching the early access, and you're like, oh my god, I can't wait to play this, and you decide to buy it full price, that's totally valid. If you're someone that you're looking at it and you're kind of evaluating what parts of it you're going to enjoy, and you kind of decide, I'm willing to pay X amount for it, and you just wait until it's that value thanks to sales, that's also valid. There is no wrong approach. I will say that if you choose not to buy the DLC, that is sending a message. If you choose to refund your purchase of the DLC, that is sending a message. But do not let anybody bully you into doing something you do not want to do. It is your money. You can spend it however you want. And while $25 can seem like there are a lot of people who are going to say, oh my god, that's a lot of money. And for what's in that DLC, that's a lot of money. But there are other people to whom $25, that is worth $25. Or to them, the value of $25 is just not that much. And they go, oh yeah, I only buy like a game or a DLC like once every 3 months. $25? Yeah, sure, whatever. That's like literally going to like, what, 2 movies with no snacks? Like, sure, like I'm gonna get way more hours enjoyment. So that's great. It just depends on you and your personal experience. But I will say, those are really the only 2 big things. The only other thing that can be done is I would like to recommend some changes to Creative Assembly for Shadows of Change that I think could make it a better value proposition. Now, there are going to be plenty of people, I think, who are not going to agree with my changes, who are going to say that it's not enough, like there needs to be way more, or that it doesn't address their particular issue or doesn't do what they want it to do. And that's totally fine. I would encourage you to be going onto Reddit, in the Steam forums, and the Discord, and doing your recommendations. I think some recommendations that I've read, I think are completely ridiculous and don't make any sense. But here are mine. So Shadows of Change, I feel, has 2 critical issues. I'm gonna lie, 3 critical issues that really should probably need to be addressed, in my opinion. And that is generic characters, 1 redesign, and a new lore. So I think if you're really trying to get Shadows of Change to feel like a deluxe experience for, a pretty high price, compared to past DLCs, even though in a lot of ways there is more going on in Shadows of Change than first meets the eye, I think. But that's a discussion I really can't have in depth until like a week from now. And that's a discussion I will have of how do I think the DLC breaks down into the price and, the strengths and minuses of that. But that's not really a discussion I can have yet due to embargoes. But here are the things that I would recommend being added into the game. And I will note that all of these things that I'm going to recommend can be done using assets and designs that are already in the game, with one exception. So the first is I really think they need to fill out the generic character slots for every single race. Back in the old days, I think, especially for the cheaper prices, you could quite easily get away with like 1 new generic character per faction, where like, oh, you get this guy gets a lord and this guy gets a hero. Okay. Now, like, if you're really going for how elite Shadows of Change feels like it's trying to be, or how deluxe it's trying to be, there needs to be generic characters on a hero and lord level for every single group. So for Kislev, I would heavily recommend doing Hag Mothers. I think the Hag Mothers are a non-negotiable. To me, that is priority number 1. There is nothing else to me that is as important as getting Hag Mothers. Just because it's a very weird feeling with the way it's currently designed. In that you kind of have like Mother Ostankia being this Ungol Hag big character that can only take ice switches and boyars, which is very strange feeling. And Kislev also has these kind of other issues where like the ice witches are locked behind your tech tree, and then you have to like pay to recruit them and go through the whole process. So like getting new ice witches is a fairly time consuming process, which means you only have boyars. You functionally only have a single lord choice until you finally start jumping through those ice witch hoops. And hag mothers would do a lot to resolve those issues. So we need hag mothers. To me, non-negotiable. For Tzeentch, I think the best thing to do for Tzeentch would be to have a Chaos Lord of Tzeentch, so a melee-focused fighter lord, and then a Zongor Shaman. So basically taking a Beastman Bray Shaman character, redesigning its assets so that it becomes a full-on Zongor, and giving it the lore of Tzeentch and, like unique, a nice skill tree. If you want to get super big bonus points, let it ride on a disc of Tzeentch as its high tier mount, right? That way, that it just goes from either foot to disc. I wouldn't even give it a chariot mount. That way it can translate easily between the Beastmen and Tzeentch roster. Speaking of Zongors, another thing that I think is a non-negotiable is that the Tzeentchian Zongors need to be redesigned. They are very, very basic. They are very boring. I do not understand why we are not using the Games Workshop version of the Zongor. Initially, I thought, oh, well, maybe it's because they didn't want to use the Age of Sigmar design, but that doesn't make any sense because all of the demons in Total War Warhammer 3 use the Age of Sigmar designs. They're the exact same units, they just got updated designs, and that's the same thing for the Zongor. They're the exact same unit, it's just the design. Like, you don't have to do the Zongor Enlightened, right? You don't have to do the ones with, like, the bows and the big great swords flying on discs. As cool as those would be, like, we don't need those. If you just want to give us we just need the design. That's literally all we need, is just the guys with the sword and the shield and the bird beak, and they've got, like, blue skin and feathers and stuff. I don't believe that should be that difficult. We have characters that have feather plumage already in the game, like Village. Who even have like Tzeentchian colors and stuff. We have plenty of bird beaks between like Kairos Fate Weaver and the Quaddle, who should not have a bird beak but does, and that will drive me crazy till the day I die. But like, there's no reason for the Zongors to have turned out as boring as they did. To me, it really feels like some corners were cut to kind of get the Zongors into the game. It sort of feels like it feels like someone was looking at like, oh god, how are we going to give Tzeentch like 3 new units? And someone was like, what about Zongors? And they just kind of hit a check mark and just kind of cobbled something together. We know y'all could do better. That's the thing, right? It's not even an issue of like being super disappointed or whatever because like they look bad. It's just that I know what Creative Assembly is capable of. And I know that they have all these crazy designs from Games Workshop, and yet they chose to go with such a poor design. And there's no excuse for that. Y'all can do better. So I think the Zongors must receive a facelift. It's fine if you just want to have Zongors as they are, where, they're elite gores. But the designs must be better. And then last, as far as like characters go, I do believe that Grand Cathay should receive the Gate Master or the Gate Warden, whatever you want to call it, being a melee focused hero who does not use magic. Right now we've got the Alchemist and the Astromancer, who are very nice. They're awesome characters. I really like them, but I think a Gate Master or a Gate Warden, a heavily armored melee focused hero who is very, probably draws very heavily from the Celestial General. Maybe he wields some different weapons or what have you, but giving Cathay like a proper melee hero, I think would go a long way to helping reinforce your armies further, because he's like a gate, the Gate Master, Gate Guardian, Gate Warden, whatever you want to call him, which we saw mentions in the short stories. A lot of people thought that the Celestial General was actually going to be the Gate Warden because there was so much talk about that character. And it's like, that character seems like a great guy. He could maybe have the Guardian passive, so he's able to like properly defend your more wizard focused characters, and he could be like a bodyguard for your Lord Magistrates. That would be a really, really nice addition to have to the Cathayan roster. And all of these characters could be made, I think, quite easily using new material you already have, assets you already have. I don't think any of these require like a monumental effort. Maybe the Zongor redesign could be a little more intensive, but I can't imagine it's that bad. I will say three other things I would very much like to see, personally, very, very strongly, that I think would go a long way to helping as well. The Zangu War Drum is a fantastic piece. It's very, very powerful. It's really fun. It adds like some really fun atmosphere to Grand Cathay, and synergizes very nicely with literally everything. It feels like it would fit very, very well with the Lord Magistrate, and would give him an elite mount that would really synergize beautifully with his whole concept of being a strong support character. So I would very, very much like to see that character receive the Lord Magistrate receive the Zangu War Drum as a mount. I know that is probably, when I think about it off the top of my head, I don't know how often we get characters. I'm actually wondering about that now. I don't know how often we get characters who use mounts from DLCs. And like, a part of me wonders if like that's why we don't tend to see that very often, but it can absolutely be done. Now granted, it doesn't have to, and the other thing, none of these need to happen immediately. I don't need these to happen by August 31st. I just need them to be considered, weighed, and what you're willing to do, you announce you're going to do. Because this has happened before with the Queen and the Crone. The Queen and the Crone was a High Elf versus Dark Elf DLC that featured Hellebron versus Alariel Radiant, and it was a little underwhelming. It only had there was like one generic character per side, being the Supreme Sorceress and the Handmaiden of the Everqueen. Then you got Hellebron and Alariel, and then you got like 3 units per side, right? You got like some infantry and cavalry, but there were no new monsters, and all of the infantry and cavalry were cool, but there wasn't really like a centerpiece model for the DLC, which caused some very fair and considerable criticism. And this was rectified by adding in the Charybdis. So Creative Assembly was able to sit down and go, okay, people aren't satisfied with the value of this DLC. What can we add? And y'all did some hemming and hawing, and you had the Hydra, which is similar to the Charybdis in a lot of ways, and said, you know what? Okay, we can make a Charybdis. And you just announced it. You said, hey, there's going to be something else. We're going to add a thing. There's going to be like they did the cheeky little hilarious event where everyone thought it was the Bloodwrack Medusa, but it ended up being the Charybdis, where they were like, oh, if y'all, kill enough people in game with the DLC, we'll release this new thing. And like, but there was like, it was a hubbub, but it came out like what, 2 or 3 weeks after the DLC did. That's totally fine. I'm not in a rush. I don't think anybody should be in a rush. We'll get there when we get there. But yeah, so we'll talk about, Zangu War Drum, I think on the Lord Magistrate would be very, very nice. Another thing is that the Cockatrice needs to be available to the Beastmen. So one of the things this DLC is doing that I do like a lot is that there are quite a few units that are available to factions that are not technically part of the DLC. So like the Beastmen are getting the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts, the Warriors of Chaos are getting the Mutalith Vortex Beast and the Cockatrice for some reason. Like they have access to like the Blue Scribes, and they even have the Zongors, which is particularly weird. I really don't think the Warriors of Chaos should get Zongors, but whatever, they're there. And then the Beastmen are also getting access to the Zongors. However, the Beastmen should have access to the Cockatrice. If you actually look at the Storm of Magic Compendium when the Cockatrice was re-released for Warhammer Fantasy 8th Edition, because it vanished off the face of the setting for many years, but when it was re-released and it got its new model that the version y'all made is based off of, the Cockatrice had all the monsters received like an affiliation score, which basically determined what factions they were friendly, neutral, or averse to. And the only faction that received a friendly score with the cockatrice were the Beastmen of Chaos. The Warriors of Chaos only got a neutral score with the cockatrice, which means the cockatrice is a Beastman monster. And this is further acknowledged by Games Workshop and Age of Sigmar in that the cockatrice is part of the Beasts of Chaos roster, not the Slaves to Darkness roster. So please, please, please put the cockatrice in the Beastman roster. Y'all can do it. I believe in you. And then the last thing, I understand that this would probably be kind of weird and difficult, but I think it would go a long way to showcasing, hey guys, you should get this DLC because then like you're going to get a lot more cool experiences with this, which is that the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts should be available as a summon to all Beast Wizards. So like it should be a skill on your skill tree that's like up in the top right next to Immortal, that when your Beast Wizard, whether a hero or a lord, gets to like level 40, I would say it should be a very high level, but like level 30 at minimum, but I would say level 40. But once they get to level 40, they can get the like ultimate beast summon, which is that when they use it, like they automatically miscast, right? They deal damage to themselves, but they summon a elemental incarnate of beasts who is able to rampage around the battlefield for like 90 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever the hell it is. I think that would be a really, really awesome thing where if you can make it locked to the DLC, great, awesome. You know, that just adds to the value of the DLC where almost like a ton of different races are benefiting. Oh, you're playing Lizardmen? Well, guess what? You got a little bit of DLC action. Oh, you're playing Dark Elves? Well, you got a little bit of, DLC action, et cetera, et cetera. Like where everyone that has a Beast Wizard benefits. Because that's, in my opinion, the big way you're going to try and justify these higher costs is that the DLCs need to be reaching across the entirety of the game, where they're touching on as many different races as possible. They're benefiting as many factions as possible, so that if you're purchasing this DLC, it's not just about the 3 main races you're playing. It's about a majority of the races you'd be playing in the game. So regardless of who your favorite race is, you're getting some new benefits. I realize that like from a coding perspective, that probably could be a bitch maybe. But even if it was like a free LC edition, that would still, I think, go a long way as like a kind of a olive branch to incentivizing people to pick up the DLC. Like if you're playing as the Empire and you get your Beast Wizard to level 40 and you're like, oh, I can summon an Incarnate Elemental, and you summon it and you're like, whoa, that thing's like super badass. That's like a really cool monster. And then you realize, oh, if I purchase the DLC, I can get that monster not just as like a 60-second summon that only lasts for a little bit, but I can get like an army of those. Like I could get a 19 stack of those, or at least have like a couple of them in all my armies because they're so badass. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna go purchase this now. Like it adds, it's that first hit. It's that first hit of cocaine, right? I think that would be a really smart marketing ploy and a really smart design decision to really reward players for like, it gives them that little taste of the DLC and encourages them to try it out. If you're not able to like lock it behind the DLC, though, it'd be a little funny to see like certain mounts or skills locked behind DLC. Like I wouldn't hate it because like as long as it's improving the character, I don't care, but it'd just be kind of funny to me. But anyway, so those are my suggestions. The other thing that I will say is I think the number one issue that I have seen brought up a lot, and granted, I think this issue came more because of the response from Robert Bartholomew's message as opposed to like really being a part of Shadows that Change itself, is that Warhammer really does have a problem with bugs. Granted, that is a weakness of the medium. Warhammer is a fucking massive game that also was not built singularly on its own. It didn't have the advantage of like Baldur's Gate 3, where it spent like 6 or 7 years or whatever it was in development, where you had this large team working purely on that game and that experience. Instead it's a game where you had like somewhere between like 2 to 4 years maybe building the first game, and then like all sorts of little bits and pieces are being added, and it's constantly adding and adding and adding and adding as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And like, you know, your teams are changing out, people leave for whatever reason, new people are hired on and they're learning and stuff. So like you have all these issues of like not everybody is necessarily as aware as they would be if they had just been all working together on, like, you know, if Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires had been a singular release that a large studio had been working on for many years, of the same people working on it for many years, I think that a lot of the bug issues that it had would be a lot less justifiable. I will admit I am much less sensitive to bugs than most people. I don't notice the vast majority of bugs that a lot of the community has issues with, but that's just the way I am. Like, I don't know. I play games and bugs happen. I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. As long as I can continue playing, like, bugs just don't bother me a lot of the time. Unless they're like really obnoxious. But it is very, very apparent that the community cares very deeply about this. And there is a substantial issue with bugs that have not been solved for a very long time, or bugs that like to come back. Because as some new thing is added via DLC or a change is made via free LC, you know, like when they're just messing with the code, like they fix this little thing over here and that causes something over there to explode. And it's just a whole thing. And what needs to happen is there needs to be a dedicated maintenance team, guys. Like, Total War Warhammer is your baby. It is your flagship. It is your golden goose. This is your moneymaker. This is making more money than anything else I think you guys have ever made in your life over at Creative Assembly. I could be wrong, but like I believe the Total War Warhammer series is the most profitable game for Creative Assembly. And it's doing very well. And it needs to have a dedicated maintenance team. There needs to be a paid group of developers whose only job is to fix bugs and make tweaks and like improve systems. And that's their job. They work with the DLC team when the DLC team is getting like closer and closer to releasing new material, making sure everything smoothly integrates. Yes, but they should also be working between DLCs on like repairing bugs and improving systems. There's no reason at this stage that I should be having issues where I can't put handgunners on certain parts of the walls in a siege battle because they won't aim down. They'll only aim like straight. And if anything gets too close, I can't see it now, which is silly. You know, I shouldn't be having so many of these particular gameplay issues that still exist in the game. I shouldn't be having issues where I'm trying to order my units through the gate and like they go, oh, nope, sorry, we can't fit. And so they all like start climbing over the walls. Some of them go through the gates, or if they do go through, they all like squish together and get stuck, or whatever you want it to be. Like, there are plenty of bugs in the game, and there's just really no excuse for all these bugs to be present. And the only reason they're there is because the only people who are able to work on fixing them are generally the people making the DLCs. And they should not be dealing with that. They should be focused on the DLC, not trying to make sure the game, not trying to fix all of the bugs that the game has, while also trying to update all of the older systems, while also trying to add in fun new free LC systems, while also trying to work on paid DLC systems. They should be purely working on free LC and DLC. And then the maintenance team should be working on updating old content to fit the game better. Like a good example being like certain monsters from Warhammer 1 and 2 don't translate very well into Warhammer 3. Like they don't have nearly enough health, or their stats are too low because and it's not because they're like broken, it's just they haven't been updated yet. So like that would be the maintenance team job, making sure everything is consistent, making sure all the bugs are solved. So that would be the big thing I would really ask for Creative Assembly that should bring the community's war, if you want to call it that, to an end, would be the commitment to hiring and maintaining a maintenance team of developers who just fix bugs and update old systems, and adding more generic characters to Shadows of Change. You know, I would love to get to get a lore of Hags. I would kill to get a lore of Hags. I don't need it, but I would really like it. Now, I understand the lore of Hags is probably the most difficult ask because it would need like someone has to figure out what it's going to be. Someone has to like completely design all the visual effects for it, all the audio effects for it, and make sure it all works and doesn't break. Which is, I understand that's a lot. That is a lot. That is so much harder than anything else that I think has been included in this video. But everything else I think is quite reasonable. I think y'all are more than capable of adding in Hag Mothers, Zongor Shaman heroes, Chaos Lords of Tzeentch, making sure the Sorcerer Lord and the Chaos Lord can upgrade into a Demon Prince when they reach the appropriate level, adding the Cockatrice to the Beastmen, putting in a Gate Warden hero for Cathay, and give us a Zengu War Drum mount for the Lord Magistrate. I think all of those are very reasonable asks, but those and the consistent bug team, I think that should be enough. I do. I think Lore of Hags would also go a long, long way to making people feel like there's that really extra spice for Kislev. Because as cool as the Hags are, they don't really add a lot to the non-Mother of Stenkia factions. Like, it's like, oh, look, a Beast, Shadow, and Death Wizard. Like, all right. But, like, a Lore of Hags would make them genuinely far more exciting. Because currently, when you take them as, like, any of the other characters, they don't really feel like Hags. They just feel like battle wizards. But anyway, that is going to be the end of my rant here. I do want to reiterate to everyone that for those of you who are getting way too horny off of all of this chaos and mayhem, stop it. It's gross and weird. I don't know. I don't appreciate people trying to like add to everyone else's anxieties that they already have, or like gleefully being like, I told you guys, I told you this was going to happen. It's like, shut up. Nobody cares. Like, just shut up, dude. It's cringe. It's cringe when you do that. It's really cringe. Like, we should all be trying to work together to make the game the best experience it can be. And if you're out there just celebrating the fact that bad things are happening, like, you're cringe. For those of you that are genuinely feeling very upset and panicked about the community response, I think it's important to understand that the community does need to respond. I think it's important to understand that the vast majority of the criticisms are valid. I think it's very important to understand that Shadows of Change, in many people's view, does not seem to be adding enough quantity of content to justify a pretty noticeable price hike. And also, the bug thing's just kind of gotten ridiculous at this point. Try to be nice to each other. I know that's stupid to say on the internet because nobody's ever fucking nice to each other, but try and be understanding of one another. And remember that Steam reviews and purchases are how you make your voice heard. That being said, I hope you use it responsibly, in the sense that if a miracle happens and Creative Assembly does come out and announce that they're gonna add more to Shadows of Change, in the weeks following, they're gonna add some more content that's part of the DLC, and they're also gonna like really buckle down and hire a bug team that's not part of the DLC team, but is a separate team, then, the responsible thing to do at that point is to then turn around and give good reviews once that content has arrived and it fulfills that end of the bargain, But that's going to be all I have to say on the subject. I am not going to talk about this again. I'm not, because it's not something that I care to just bang on the drums about, because I don't like to feed into it. And it could literally just be endless talking in circles, and the only people who I think enjoy talking in circles about it are bad actors. So I'm just not interested in continuing that. I will put out one final video after the last embargo drops, where we can give reviews, where I will talk very frankly about Shadows of Change. And I will hope that in the week or so plus that it takes us to get to that point, I really, really hope Creative Assembly will have come out and made some commitments. But it is a very realistic possibility that they're not going to do anything until after Shadows of Change, because they might just be waiting for this all to blow over. To which I honestly think the correct answer is that it should not blow over. that it may be unpleasant and it may be unfun to witness and be a part of, but I think it's important for us to continue to make our voices heard and to hold the lines until CA budges, whether that takes us into September or October or November. So thank you all for watching. And once again, make sure to be polite. Like, even if you don't like something, you don't need to be a dick about it. It's also not the apocalypse. They're not out there eating your children. It's just a game, guys. Chill. It's just a game. You can make your disappointment and your upsetty spaghettiness known without being an asshole about it. It's not that hard. Yeah, hopefully things get better. And hopefully they learn their lesson going into Shadows of Thrones of Decay. If you're going to charge $25, guys, fine. But, like, you really got to sell it. You really got to sell it, dudes. So thank you all for watching. I think I've said that like 8 times. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you when I see you.